I'm Jenna Miscavige. I was born and raised in Scientology. I left when I was 21 years old and wrote a book about it. My uncle, David Miscavige, is the leader of Scientology, and this is my YouTube channel. Hi guys. So today I wanted to talk about something that is a little bit difficult for me to talk about, but I think it's time. So a few months back, I was asking people to ask me questions that they might have about my life or about Scientology and put them in the comments. And I was taking each of those questions and answering them one at a time. And I still plan on continuing to do that. But the question that I got asked the most is, what is my relationship with my family currently, with my parents and my brothers? And that's kind of a tough one to answer because it's sort of like a never-ending can of worms, and it's a complicated subject, but I also want to be real, and I feel like there are possibly many others who are in a similar situation to me. And so I thought that the way that I could best serve myself and others is to be honest. And the truth is that after leaving Scientology, your life just doesn't just go to being perfect. It's complicated. And so I mean, just to answer the question directly and head on, I have a decent relationship with my dad. He lives across the country, and so I see him a couple times a year. And I think the reason why we have a mostly good relationship is because when I was growing up, I did at least see him once a week. And in the time when I was with him, he took an interest in me. He would make me food, which was nurturing. And I guess I just had the idea that he liked being around me. And even in times when I was 3,000 miles away, he did constantly try to get me to call him, and he did write to me. And when he left Scientology, he very much wanted me to go with him. And I feel like even in times when my mom was away doing various projects growing up in Scientology, he was always there. And again, I didn't live with him, but he would do little things like he used his pay and he put me in a book club where I would get like 3 books every month. And when I would go to his apartment once a week, he would read them to me. And I guess that's like really meaningful. And those are part of my core memories that I can't forget. And in the end, even now, we just have many things in common. We both like cooking. We both like music. And I guess my dad's side of the family, like my grandma and my Aunt Denise, they're people who were in my life and who took time out of their day to, take me shopping when I had a day off, or bring me to their house and make me food. And I just really felt like I was a part of that family. Where on my mom's side, not so much. I never really saw any of her siblings. I very rarely saw my mom. My Aunt Sarah on my mom's side is somebody who I did see sometimes. And I did definitely feel like she was a family member. But that was pretty much it. My mom and I have had a very rocky relationship over the years. When I was young, even though I didn't see her much, I idolized her. My mom is somebody who's very competent and who is hardworking. So is my dad. But in the Sea Org, which is Scientology's most dedicated group, She was just kind of like a star. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this video, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics that are available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone who you can really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and you think you'd benefit from a therapy session, click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/JennaMiscavige and get 10% off your first month of therapy. She was looked up to by many, and she was high ranking, and it was like I aspired to be like her when I grew up. But looking back, it is hard for me to reconcile how she was away so often and how this was okay. Like, I saw my dad only already once a week, but many times I didn't see her for a year or 6 months at a time, or I only saw her once in a year or 6 months. I mean, from when I was 12 until I was 18, I only saw my mom 2 times. And I guess initially when I came out of Scientology, I didn't have a big issue with this. It was normal. And but then as I sort of spent more time out in the regular world, and especially as I had my own kids, I just couldn't understand how that would be possible. And I sort of saw all the things that I was giving to them that I really needed as a kid, and I didn't get it, but I didn't know it because I was so used to just sort of stuffing my emotions. And if I started thinking as a kid like, oh, I wish I had this, or I wish I could talk to someone about this, it almost was something I wouldn't even think about. Like, I would just correct myself and be like, oh, well, that's the wrong thought to have. And I'm just having it because there's something wrong with me. So don't even bother. And it's just crazy to me that to grow up in a way that you're always having to like stop yourself from being real and emotional and just to be yourself. And so initially when I got out of Scientology, I didn't have any anger towards my parents, but I did feel like I didn't know them. And so it felt like when we would hang out together that there was sort of like a forced intimacy. And like when my dad or my mom would introduce me to someone and then they would tell a story from when I was a kid, I just felt like it was fake. And I remember that happening once, and I remember being just annoyed, but then I felt guilty for being annoyed because I was one of many people who left the Sea Org in Scientology and was able to talk to their parents. And so, and that exact way of thinking that like, oh, I should be grateful for this, and honestly, I should, but that way of thinking sort of led me to force the relationship on myself for many, many years, and to feel like if I wasn't close with my mom and if I wasn't appreciative of everything, then it was because I was ungrateful. And unfortunately, that led to a lot of resentment. Initially, when I first started speaking out about Scientology, my parents dissuaded me from doing it. And with my ex-husband's parents, they basically had like a little meeting together or a phone call where they discussed like sort of how they were going to stop us from doing this. And I just felt like that was a betrayal at the time. And I guess on some level, I felt like if joining Scientology and having me grow up in that way was really something that they regretted and something that, as they had said, was the biggest mistake of their life, then why would they stop me or fault me from speaking out about it? And why wouldn't they speak out about it, to be honest? Why wouldn't they make it known? Why wouldn't they support me? And that just made me feel very alone and frustrated. And that was sort of like, I don't know what the right word for it is, but it was sort of like the thing that was like always in the background that was bugging me. And when my son was born, me and my ex-husband and my son moved to Virginia for a few years, where my parents lived. And I feel like we made a go of making it like trying to be a family, and it just wound up as a huge disaster that blew up in our faces and was just kind of like a bit of a nightmare. We moved back to San Diego. My parents got divorced. My mom moved out here, and she was very hands-on with my kids. She was very helpful, and she did a lot of nice things for me. But there was always this part of me that felt like I was responsible for her emotional well-being, and that I owed it to her in order to be in my life all the time. And I didn't actually realize it, but I resented it. And we had many huge blow-ups, huge fights where she would just sort of tell me that I was ungrateful and I was always talking about Scientology and I was just a victim. And one time she said, the last time we fought, she said, "You just don't like me. You actually just don't like being around me." And I guess for many years I kept inviting her to things. I kept answering her texts. I kept doing all of that because I felt like I had to. I mean, my ex-husband was very much always like, no, if you cut off any family members, you're the same as Scientology. And that was believed to be the case, even though it was toxic and it was hurting me. And so I always had this shame of feeling like there was something wrong with me where I couldn't get along with my mom, but also this resentment for keeping her in my life. And the truth is that it wasn't all necessarily her fault. Like, there were things that she would do that would trigger me that she does for her own reasons. Like, for example, when I would talk to her, I would feel like she wouldn't listen. She would get distracted every second. And instead of adjusting my expectations, like, okay, that's just how she is, maybe she's a little bit ADD or something like that, I would be like, she won't even listen to me after already not even being there, having raised me. And I would just take it extremely personally, when the reality is that my mom has her own things in her own childhood, or it might just be her personality. But I have this like expectation, and it just never got met. And I think that it set it up for failure. Or other things like I feel like she wanted attention. And I think on some level I wanted attention because I was the daughter, and I felt like she wanted my attention or wanted other people's attention. And I felt like it was too much of a burden for me to give that to her or to be her primary source of joy and happiness in her life through my kids. It felt like if I took a break from inviting her to things, then she would be miserable. But that's not something she ever said. That's something that I just assumed and something that I thought was my duty and I owed it to her. Or there were times when I felt like she was competing with me, and it just really frustrated me because I would never compete with my daughter. Like if there's anything where I'm in a competition with my daughter, it's like she wins. She's the most beautiful. She's the most talented. It's like her win is my win. Or there was just other things that would trigger me. Like she would talk about her family and say, my sister, my brother, my cousin, and sort of brag about it, which is something that she did a lot, is brag. And I realize that it's probably because of her own insecurities, but it's something that I would be resentful about. And I would be like, why is she referring to these people as her sister instead of my aunt? Like it felt like she was trying to keep her family as something special for her. And there's always been, and there still is, this like weird division that is made in my family between my mom, my two brothers, and me and my dad, where it's sort of like me and my dad are on one side and my mom and my brothers are on another side. And it's completely unnecessary and it's toxic. And I just felt like that would be highlighted in those times when she would refer to her family as just her family. And then sometimes if her family member would be in town and I didn't want to hang out with them, she would say that I was not a family person or that I am not putting in time for my family. And that's fine. I'm just not that type of person, meaning me, but she is. And that would make me be like, it would just trigger me. And I'd be like, well, you're not that type of person since you weren't there the entire time I was a child. And how dare you say that I'm not a family person? And like just little dumb things would happen. Like she would say happy birthday on the 2nd of February, but my birthday is the 1st of February. Or she would expect me to dedicate a whole day to her after Mother's Day. And it was just really triggering for me. Like it was just, and I even feel like I'm over explaining at this point, but we would have these blow-ups where it just like reminded me of being in the Sea Org, and it reminded me of my early life, and it was just too much. And a lot of these things are about how I take them and not just what's being done. Like an example of something is that like anytime my mom bought me something for Christmas, or my dad for that matter, or my birthday, or Mother's Day, I always had the idea that I owed them and that I had to buy them something of equal value, and I always would. And I don't know why. It's a thing in Scientology, which is called exchange, which is basically if someone gives you something, you have to give them something of equal value back, or even better, you have to give them exchange in abundance. And so I felt on some level uncomfortable with them giving me things. And so I would have to give back even more. And at that point, it didn't feel like a nice gift. It felt like something I had to do, and I resented it. And I think that subconsciously it would remind me of, all the times between when I was 12 and 22 where I never saw my parents on my birthdays or Christmas or anything like that. And it would just become sometimes hard to have her around. And yeah, I guess I just didn't realize it when it was happening until it all blew up. And so we went through, like right before COVID, we had a blow up, and I was just like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And we didn't talk for almost 3 years. And I had this irrational fear of her showing up at my house at any time and barging in and yelling at me. And it was literally like this huge fear that I had that I am only just now getting over. I don't even know why I had that fear. In late May, early June 2023, me and my ex-husband decided to get divorced. We had been married since we were 18 in Scientology, and we had grown apart. There were so many issues. And my mom was somebody who I wanted to lean on at that time. And so I reached out to her. As I tend to do, I tend to go back. When I lose one relationship, I tend to go back to a toxic, different relationship, and in hopes that it will work out. And it just kind of wound up being a lot of drama on top of something that was already happening that was extremely hard for me in my life. We would argue, and I just needed someone to be there for me. And then a few months into my divorce, and long after my ex-husband had moved out, many months later, I did a video over at Growing Up in Scientology that was all about my story and growing up and my life. After it, I got a text from my mom that was just about, it was talking about, it was basically my uncle's height. And I just couldn't understand why that was all she had said as a result of me telling that whole story. And so the next time I saw her, I guess I was being kind of bitchy, and I said, "Is that all you had to say about that?" And I wish I hadn't started that fight. And we had an argument about a bunch of other things that were going on. And basically, how the conversation ended, this was in August of last year. She said in the conversation that I was just all I talk about is Scientology, that I was being a victim, and what did I want from her? Did I want her to grovel at my feet every day and apologize? And I had said something like, "No, I don't expect that at all. I know that you've had a hard childhood as well. When I'm talking about it, I would just hope that you would listen and be a parent to me in the moment." And basically, she said, "Well, I don't want to be a parent to you in the moment." And the only thing that I could have done better when I look back at it, or the only thing I could have done, was to not have kids at all. And Jenna, I'm done with you. And I was just like, okay, this is it. This is it. So, on top of dealing with a divorce and many huge changes in my life, I was also dealing with that. I was worried about how I would be able to support myself. I was worried about my kids. And yeah, and that's pretty much, I guess we've had one or two texts here and there, but that's pretty much the last conversation we've had. So that's what my relationship is with my mom. And the thing that's been hard is the constant blaming of myself, or the shame that I've had over the years with not having a great relationship with my family, and thinking that if I'm not having them in my life, that I'm guilty of being like Scientology. And that's something that I really have tried to work through in therapy. And I have at many times, and then the guilt comes back. And in Scientology, there was never any guilt for this when my parents weren't around because it was normal. But in the world that I'm in today, it's like every Mother's Day, every birthday, every Christmas, it's just something that I have to think about. And rather than just looking at it for what it is, a decision that I had to make that is best for me and my family, without even pinning someone's fault on it, what creeps in is the shame when I start to think that there's something wrong with me. And that's the part that becomes toxic. That the reason that I don't have a great family like everybody else is because I'm unlovable. When this type of thing happens over and over again in your life, it's hard not to think that everybody in your life is going to wind up leaving. Especially after getting divorced. It's just that growing up in that way kind of stays with you because your mind makes certain decisions based on what has already happened. And the scary part is you can sabotage relationships that are good because of what you are worried about will happen, because it's what has happened. And so in order to protect yourself, somebody can say something a little bit sideways or a little bit like something that was said before, and you can be like, oh, does that mean that they don't love me? Does that mean, oh, and if they don't love me, they're going to leave? And in order to protect myself, I need to make myself strong and put on my armor and say hurtful things or leave them first. And it's just kind of can turn into this self-fulfilling prophecy where you're trying to move on in your life and you're sabotaging yourself and you don't even know it. You think that you're being smart. You think that you're doing the right things to protect yourself. And you have no way of knowing unless you get help. And so the therapy that I've had over the years has been really helpful. And it has helped me come to terms with the fact that my family situation isn't something that I need to feel shame about. And also, some courses I've taken online and just having different healthy relationships have sort of helped me calm down and not be on such high alert. But the truth is that it still creeps in. It still happens sometimes. And many of the lessons that I've already learned, I have to learn over and over again. And I guess that's not just true for somebody who grew up in Scientology. I think that it's true for everybody probably. And having the strength and knowledge to rewire your brain or to pause before you do the sabotaging things or before you make decisions when you're in that sort of fight or flight area of your brain is something that I struggle with, and it's something that I want to get better at, and it's something that that sometimes defeats me, and I really do not want that to be the story of my life. And so I'm just going to keep trying. And, sometimes there's really, really good times too when I'm proud of myself and everything is going well. And I guess life is just like anything. It's not that everything is going to be easy and peachy. It's that basically you only fail when you stop trying. And so, I'm going to fall many more times. And my goal is just to have the strength and belief in myself to pick myself back up and to apologize when I make mistakes and to try to be a better person, and to try to be a better person in those moments, and in the moments when I'm not in that part of my brain, which can be destructive or difficult, I can try to fit in as many good moments as I can that sort of offset the hard things. And so, yeah, I guess that's my goal for right now. And I just wanted to share that with you guys because I know a lot of people who listen are dealing with family estrangement, or who are bedridden, or who have had traumatic childhoods, abusive relationships. And I guess sometimes I feel like I'm alone or isolated in this. And then I see all of the sweet things that you guys say and the little bits of your stories that you tell. And I just think that it's sweet that we're here for each other. And I don't want you guys to feel like you're alone. I don't want you to feel like you're the only one. And if me sort of making this video can help to stop somebody from having that whole shame spiral that results in being destructive in your own life, even if it just helps somebody with one shame spiral one time, even if it's something that sits at the back of their mind that gives them strength one time, then I feel like it's worth me talking about. Because when people have opened up and shared their stories with me, that has been the thing that has made me feel less alone in those times. And yeah, so that's why I wanted to share that. All right, you guys. Well, future videos will be about happier things. Anyways, well, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And don't forget to check out Sins of Scientology here on YouTube. And if you haven't read my book already, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Beyond Belief: My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape. All right, guys, take care. Bye.